On December the 17th, 1989, a peculiar yellow-skinned family debuted on the Fox television network, and no one could have imagined that this animated sitcom would become something far more extraordinary than mere entertainment. The Simpsons, created by Matt Groening, would go on to become the longest-running American animated series in television history, accumulating more than 790 episodes over 36 seasons. But beyond its cultural significance and comedic brilliance, the show has developed an almost mythical reputation for something entirely unexpected: predicting the future. From presidential elections to technological innovations, from corporate mergers to international scandals, The Simpsons has, time and again, depicted events in its animated world that would later materialize in reality with unsettling accuracy. Al Jean, one of the show's original writers and longtime showrunner, has offered the most pragmatic explanation, stating that the show's numerous apparent predictions are really just educated guesses, adding that if you throw enough darts, you're going to get some bullseyes. Producer Bill Oakley has been even more dismissive of the supernatural implications, maintaining that there are very few cases where The Simpsons predicted something and that it's mainly just coincidence because the episodes are so old that history repeats itself. Yet despite these rational explanations, the sheer volume and specificity of these coincidences continues to astonish viewers and fuel endless speculation. This is the story of how a satirical cartoon about a dysfunctional American family inadvertently became one of the most accurate forecasters of modern events. The story that captured the world's attention most dramatically occurred on the evening of November 8, 2016, when Donald John Trump was elected the 45th President of the United States. As news networks scrambled to explain how this political outsider had defied every poll and prediction, a particular segment of the internet was busy resurrecting an episode that had aired 16 years earlier. The episode was called Bart to the Future, and it had originally broadcast on Fox on March 19, 2000. In this installment, Bart Simpson is shown a vision of his future by a manager at a Native American casino. In this glimpse of what lies ahead, Bart discovers that his sister Lisa has become the President of the United States, the first straight female to hold the office. But the truly prophetic moment comes during a scene in the Oval Office, where President Lisa Simpson delivers a line that would echo through time. "As you know, we've inherited quite a budget crunch from President Trump." The episode's writer, Dan Grianey, spoke to The Hollywood Reporter in 2016 about this seemingly impossible prediction. He explained that the joke was intended as a warning to America and that Trump just seemed like the logical last stop before hitting bottom. Greenay was quick to point out that the line was never meant as an actual prophecy, but rather as a reflection of the show's tendency to embrace the over-the-top side of American culture. The Simpsons, according to Greenay, has always pushed American absurdity to its limits, and in 2000, a Trump presidency represented the ultimate expression of that absurdity. What many people forget is that Trump had been flirting with political ambitions long before his 2015 campaign announcement. In 1999, he had formed an exploratory committee to run for president as a Reform Party candidate. This presidential bid ultimately went nowhere, but the writers of The Simpsons had taken notice. They seized upon Trump as a symbol of everything excessive and outlandish in American public life. Matt Groening, the show's creator, later told The Guardian that Trump was of course the most absurd placeholder joke name that we could think of at the time. And that's still true. He added that the whole thing was beyond satire. The episode gained renewed attention during the 2016 election. And when Trump actually won, the show acknowledged its strange prescience in the opening credits of an episode called Havana Wild Weekend, which aired on November 13, 2016. In that episode's chalkboard gag, Bart writes a simple message: "Being right sucks." The line was a wry acknowledgement of a prediction the writers wished had never come true, but the Trump prediction represents only the tip of a very large iceberg. The Simpsons' apparent ability to see into the future extends across every domain of human activity, from technology to sports, from corporate business to international politics. Consider the curious case of the Disney-Fox merger. On December 14, 2017, the Walt Disney Company announced that it was acquiring a massive portion of 21st Century Fox for $52.4 billion. The deal would bring numerous properties under the Disney umbrella, including The Simpsons itself. But fans of the show were quick to point out that this corporate consolidation had been depicted on the show almost 2 decades earlier. The episode in question was called When You Dish Upon a Star, and it had first aired on November 8, 1998. The plot centered on Homer Simpson becoming a personal assistant to Hollywood couple Alec Baldwin and Kim Basinger, who were then married in real life. At one point in the episode, director Ron Howard pitches a movie idea to studio executives. The scene takes place at the 20th Century Fox studio lot, and eagle-eyed viewers noticed something peculiar about the sign outside the building. It read, 20th Century Fox, a division of Walt Disney Co. When ESPN reporter Darren Rovell tweeted about this coincidence on the day the merger was announced, it quickly went viral. The image from the 1998 episode spread across social media platforms, adding another entry to the growing legend of Simpsons predictions. Rich Appel, who wrote the episode in 1998, offered some insight into how this particular joke came about. He pointed out that Disney had bought Cap Cities/ABC a couple of years earlier, so the joke was a reference to that and to the general sense that Disney would own everything eventually. Mike Scully, another producer who worked on the episode, explained that it was just one of those "we need a sign" joke moments for an exterior shot of 20th Century Fox. The writers simply extrapolated from existing trends, and their satirical exaggeration eventually became reality. Al Jean, ever the pragmatist, responded to the viral attention on Twitter by writing that he predicted people would make far too much of this mere coincidence. But the coincidence was too striking to ignore, and it cemented The Simpsons' reputation as a show with an uncanny connection to future events. The technological predictions of The Simpsons have proven equally remarkable. In a 1995 episode called Lisa's Wedding, the show offered a glimpse into a future set in the year 2010. Lisa Simpson visits a fortune teller at a Renaissance fair and is shown a vision of her adult life, including her engagement to a charming Englishman named Hugh Parkfield, voiced by actor Mandy Patinkin. Throughout the episode, viewers are treated to various depictions of future technology that would have seemed like pure science fiction at the time. In one scene, Hugh speaks into a device strapped to his wrist. The gadget functions as a combination phone and watch, a hybrid communication device that allowed him to make calls simply by speaking into it. The design was admittedly primitive by modern standards, featuring a flip phone aesthetic that reflected the technology of the mid-1990s, but the concept was unmistakable: a smartwatch. The Apple Watch would not be introduced until 2015, and the broader smartwatch market did not become mainstream until what industry analysts called the year of the smartwatch in 2014. Yet here was The Simpsons, casually depicting such a device nearly 2 decades before it became a reality. The same episode featured another technological prediction that has since become ubiquitous: video calling. Lisa communicates with her mother Marge through a screen-based phone that allows them to see each other in real time. While the device depicted used a rotary dial rather than a touchscreen, the core concept was identical to what would later become FaceTime, Skype, and countless other video calling applications. The episode essentially predicted a world where face-to-face communication across vast distances would become routine, a prediction that seemed fantastical in 1995 but utterly mundane by 2010. The writer's foresight extended even to the frustrations of modern technology. In a 1994 episode called Lisa on Ice, school bully Dolph attempts to type a note on an Apple Newton, an early personal digital assistant. He intends to write "Beat Up Martin," but the device's handwriting recognition software misinterprets his scrawl, transforming the message into "Eat Up Martha." This gag was a direct comment on the Newton's notoriously poor text recognition, but it also eerily foreshadowed the autocorrect failures that would plague smartphone users decades later. The joke had real-world implications. Nitin Ganatra, Apple's former director of engineering for iOS applications, revealed in a 2013 interview with Fast Company that the Simpsons gag had served as a rallying cry for Apple's iPhone keyboard development team. According to Ganatra, if you heard people talking and they used the words "eat up Martha," it was basically a reference to the fact that they needed to nail the keyboard. The phrase became shorthand within Apple for the imperative to make text input work flawlessly. A throwaway joke on an animated sitcom had directly influenced the development of one of the most important technological devices of the 21st century. Perhaps no prediction has generated more conspiracy theories than the apparent foreshadowing of the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks on the World Trade Center. The episode in question is The City of New York vs. Dark. Homer Simpson, which aired as the premiere of the show's 9th season on September 21, 1997. The plot involves the Simpson family traveling to Manhattan to retrieve their car, which a drunken Barney Gumble has abandoned at the World Trade Center's Austin J. Tobin Plaza. The episode was written by Ian Maxtone Graham and executive producers Bill Oakley and Josh Weinstein specifically suggested setting the action at the World Trade Center because it was a widely known location that would be immediately recognizable to viewers. Great lengths were taken to create a detailed replication of Manhattan, and the Twin Towers featured prominently throughout the episode. The alleged prediction comes from a brief moment when Lisa holds up a brochure advertising bus service to New York. The brochure displays a price of $9 and features a silhouette of the New York skyline with the Twin Towers prominently displayed. Because of the positioning of the price next to the towers, the image appears to some viewers to read 9/11. This visual coincidence has been widely circulated on social media and cited as evidence that The Simpsons somehow knew what was coming. Al Jean has addressed this specific claim multiple times over the years. In an interview with NME in 2021, he described the supposed 9/11 reference as completely bizarre and strange. He acknowledged the eerie coincidence, but emphasized that it was exactly that, a coincidence. Bill Oakley, who oversaw the episode's production, has provided a more detailed explanation. He noted that $9 was picked as a comically cheap fare for a bus trip to New York, and that to create an advertisement for this deal, the artist logically chose to include a silhouette of the NYC skyline. Oakley signed off on the design and considered it pretty self-explanatory. However, he has granted that it's eerie given that it's the only episode of any series ever that had an entire act of World Trade Center jokes. Following the actual September 11th attacks, the episode was pulled from syndication out of respect for the tragedy. It would not return to broadcast for several years, and when it did, the World Trade Center scenes remained an uncomfortable reminder of how fiction can intersect with reality in unpredictable ways. The world of sports has provided fertile ground for Simpsons predictions, none more dramatic than the show's apparent foreknowledge of the 2018 Winter Olympics curling results. In an episode called Boy Meets Curl, which aired on February 14, 2010, Homer and Marge Simpson discover a shared talent for the obscure winter sport. After wandering into an ice rink during curling practice, Homer famously declares, "Marge, this is perfect for both of us. It's got bowling for me and sweeping for you." The couple forms a mixed doubles team with Agnes and Seymour Skinner, and through a series of improbable events, they qualify to represent the United States at the 2010 Winter Olympics in Vancouver. The episode culminates in a gold medal match against Sweden, which the American team wins despite Marge suffering a shoulder injury during the semi-finals. 8 years later, at the 2018 Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang, South Korea, the United States men's curling team pulled off one of the most unexpected victories in Olympic history. Led by skip John Schuster, the team defeated Sweden 1-0-7 to claim the gold medal. It was only the second medal the United States had ever won in the sport. The parallels to the Simpsons episode were immediately noticed by fans, and the story quickly went viral. Rob Lazebnik, who wrote the episode, celebrated the coincidence on Twitter, writing that it was not the first time the US had beat Sweden and that Marge and Homer had done it 8 years earlier. Al Jean also acknowledged the prediction, posting congratulations to the US men's gold medal curling team, and adding that good predictions can come true too. The specificity of the prediction extended beyond just the winning country. In both the episode and reality, the opponent in the gold medal match was Sweden. The writers had somehow identified the exact matchup that would occur 8 years in the future. Lazebnik later explained that when developing the episode, he had consulted with four-time American mixed curling champions Brady and Kristen Clark, as well as Rick Patsky, the chief operating officer of the United States Curling Association. These experts helped ensure the depiction of curling in the episode was accurate, though they could hardly have anticipated that the plot would one day mirror actual Olympic results. The entertainment industry has provided some of the most striking Simpsons predictions, including the show's apparent foreknowledge of Lady Gaga's 2017 Super Bowl halftime performance. In a 2012 episode called Lisa Goes Gaga, the pop superstar voiced an animated version of herself who performs a concert for the citizens of Springfield. During the performance, the animated Lady Gaga is shown suspended from wires, flying over the crowd in a shimmering silver outfit while performing elaborate aerial maneuvers. Fast forward to Super Bowl LI on February 5, 2017, and viewers watched as the real Lady Gaga opened her halftime performance in strikingly similar fashion. She descended from the roof of Houston's NRG Stadium, wearing a sparkly bodysuit, suspended by cables, performing acrobatics that bore an unmistakable resemblance to her Simpsons appearance 5 years earlier. The similarities extended to her outfit, her aerial movements, and even her subsequent piano performance during the show. Fans immediately flooded social media with side-by-side comparisons of the two performances. The images showed the animated and real Lady Gaga in nearly identical poses, both dangling from wires above their respective audiences. The coincidence was so striking that many wondered if Gaga's choreography team had actually watched the Simpsons episode for inspiration. Fact-checkers at Snopes noted that the Simpsons episode was actually spoofing previous Lady Gaga performances rather than predicting future ones. The singer had performed similar aerial stunts at concerts before, including a 2011 appearance on Good Morning America where she ziplined into the venue. The animated episode was essentially exaggerating and satirizing Gaga's existing stage persona. Nevertheless, the specific visual similarities between the 2012 episode and the 2017 Super Bowl performance remained eerily precise. One of the most darkly prescient predictions involved the famous Las Vegas entertainers Siegfried Fischbacher and Roy Horn, better known simply as Siegfried and Roy. For decades, the German-American duo had dazzled audiences at the Mirage Hotel and Casino with elaborate magic acts featuring white tigers and other exotic animals. They were Las Vegas royalty, icons of the Strip who had performed together for over 40 years. In a 1993 episode called Dollar Pringfield, or How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Legalized Gambling, The Simpsons introduced characters named Gunther and Ernst, an obvious parody of Siegfried and Roy. The animated duo performed at Mr. Burns' newly opened casino using white tigers in their act, just like their real-world counterparts. During the episode, one of their tigers named Anastasia experiences a flashback to her life in the wild and her subsequent capture by the performers. Driven by these memories, Anastasia attacks Gunther and Ernst on stage, mauling them in front of the audience. 10 years later, on October 3, 2003, tragedy struck during a Siegfried and Roy performance at the Mirage. Roy Horn was attacked by Monticore, a 7-year-old white Bengal tiger, during their act. The tiger latched onto Roy's sleeve and eventually bit his neck, severing his spine. Horn survived the attack, but was left partially paralyzed. The duo never performed together again, and their legendary show came to an abrupt end. When confronted with this apparent prediction, the Simpsons production team was characteristically dismissive. They maintained that an attack by a wild animal on performers who worked with dangerous creatures daily was bound to happen sooner or later. The prediction was less prophecy than probability, they argued. Yet the specific details, including the white tiger, the casino setting, and the on-stage mauling, remained disturbingly accurate. The world of international football provided another stunning example of Simpsons' prescience, with the 2015 FIFA corruption scandal in an episode called You Don't Have to Live Like a Referee, which aired on March 30th, 2014. Homer Simpson is approached by an official from the World Football Federation, a thinly veiled stand-in for FIFA. The official explains that the organization needs someone with unimpeachable integrity to referee World Cup matches because corruption has become endemic throughout the governing body. The episode depicts FIFA as thoroughly rotten, with officials routinely accepting bribes to influence match outcomes and tournament hosting decisions. At one point, the World Football Federation vice president who recruits Homer is arrested mid-conversation for his own corrupt activities. The scene played as satirical exaggeration in 2014, but it would prove to be remarkably prophetic. Just over a year later, on May 27, 2015, Swiss federal authorities arrested 7 FIFA officials at a luxury hotel in Zurich. The arrests came in connection with a sprawling corruption investigation led by the United States Department of Justice. Eventually, 9 FIFA officials and 5 corporate executives were indicted on charges of wire fraud, racketeering, and money laundering. The scandal implicated the organization's highest levels and led to the resignation of longtime FIFA president Sepp Blatter. Investigations revealed that bribery had indeed influenced the awarding of World Cup hosting rights to Russia for 2018 and Qatar for 2022, exactly the kind of corruption The Simpsons had depicted. As an added bonus, the same episode correctly predicted that Germany would win the 2014 World Cup, defeating Brazil along the way. The episode had aired just 3 months before the actual tournament, and its writers had somehow identified both the eventual champion and one of their victims in the knockout rounds. Germany 7. One demolition of Brazil in the 2014 semi-final remains one of the most shocking results in World Cup history. The Simpsons' technological predictions extended to the realm of environmental consequences as well. In a 1990 episode called 2 Cars in Every Garage and 3 Eyes on Every Fish, Bart Simpson catches a 3-eyed fish while fishing downstream of the Springfield nuclear power plant. The fish, quickly dubbed Blinky by the media, becomes a symbol of the plant's environmental negligence and the potential dangers of nuclear contamination. The episode used Blinky as a satirical device to comment on nuclear power and corporate indifference to environmental concerns. Mr. Burns, the plant's owner, attempts to spin the mutation as a sign of evolution rather than pollution. The storyline was clearly fictional, an exaggerated warning about the risks of nuclear energy. 20 decades later, in October 2011, fishermen in Cordoba, Argentina, caught a 3-eyed wolffish in a reservoir fed by a local nuclear power plant. The discovery sent shockwaves through the scientific community and made international headlines. The fishermen described the surprise of getting this rare specimen, noting that when they examined the fish with a flashlight in the dark, they saw that it had a third eye. The parallels to the Simpsons episode were immediately drawn by media outlets around the world. Here was a real-life Blinky, complete with the nuclear power plant connection that the show had depicted decades earlier. The fish was handed over to local authorities for testing, though the results of those tests have never been conclusively published. Additional 3-eyed fish sightings have been reported in other locations, including a 3-eyed catfish caught off the Hamilton Avenue Bridge in Brooklyn, and another in Canada's Lake Nipissing. The University of the Sciences physics professor Paul Halpern addressed the Blinky phenomenon in his book What's Science Ever Done For Us? What the Simpsons Can Teach Us About Physics, Robots, Life, and the Universe. He pointed out that for Mr. Burns's claim that the fish represented natural evolution to be valid, the mutation would need to provide some survival advantage that could be tracked over multiple generations. The real-life 3-eyed fish sightings, like their animated predecessor, more likely represent the disturbing effects of environmental contamination rather than evolutionary progress. Perhaps the most heartwarming prediction came true in 2024. Nearly 3 decades after it was first depicted on the show. In a 1996 episode called Homerpalooza, the Simpson family attends a music festival that parodies the famous Lollapalooza concert tour. Among the performers at the fictional Hullabalooza festival are several real bands, including Cypress Hill, the influential hip-hop group from California. During the episode, an announcer asks if somebody ordered the London Symphony Orchestra, possibly while high, and looks pointedly at Cypress Hill. The animated members of the band mutter amongst themselves before admitting that they think they did order the orchestra. A violinist from the London Symphony Orchestra responds that they mostly know classical music, but could give it a shot. The two groups then perform an unlikely collaboration on Cypress Hill's hit song, Insane in the Brain. For decades, this remained simply a funny gag about the absurdity of mixing hip-hop with classical music. But in 2017, Cypress Hill posted the video clip of their Simpsons appearance on Twitter, tagging the London Symphony Orchestra. To everyone's surprise, the actual LSO responded with a message saying they mostly play classical, but they'd give it a shot. The exchange sparked years of anticipation among fans who hoped the collaboration might actually happen. Finally, on July 10, 2024, at London's prestigious Royal Albert Hall, Cypress Hill took the stage backed by the full London Symphony Orchestra. The group, consisting of members Be Real, Sen Dog, DJ Muggs and Bobo, performed their seminal album Black Sunday, with orchestral arrangements conducted by Troy Miller. Songs like Insane in the Brain and I Wanna Get High were reimagined with strings, brass and woodwinds behind them. Be Real addressed the significance of the event in an interview with BBC News, calling it one of those checklist moments. He noted that the group had played many historical venues throughout their career, but nothing as prestigious as the Royal Albert Hall. Cypress Hill issued a statement saying they were thrilled to be performing with the London Symphony Orchestra in such a prestigious venue, calling it a dream come true, and adding that it was a collaboration only The Simpsons could have predicted. Catherine McDowell, the LSO's managing director, acknowledged the Simpsons connection directly. She noted that after years of social media teasing, many fans had started to believe it would only be a pipe dream, but expressed delight that the LSO was finally joining Cypress Hill on stage. She even thanked the creators of The Simpsons for the idea. The 2013 horse meat scandal that swept through Europe provided another instance of Simpsons prognostication. In a 1994 episode called Sweet Seymour Skinner's Bardass Song, the show's lunch lady, Doris, is depicted preparing food using meat from a large barrel labelled Assorted Horse Parts, now with more testicles. The gag was played for shock value and dark humour, the kind of exaggerated, gross-out joke that animated shows specialise in. But in January 2013, food safety authorities in Ireland announced that they had found horse DNA in beef burgers sold at several major supermarket chains. The discovery triggered a continent-wide investigation that revealed the contamination was far more widespread than anyone had initially suspected. Some products labelled as beef contained up to 100% horse meat. Major food companies and supermarket chains were implicated, and millions of products were recalled from shelves across Europe. The scandal exposed deep problems in the European food supply chain, with meat being mislabeled and adulterated at various points between the farm and the supermarket shelf. It was exactly the kind of corporate negligence and consumer deception that The Simpsons had lampooned nearly 2 decades earlier. Lunch lady Doris and her barrel of horse parts had been presented as absurdist humour, but the reality proved disturbingly similar. The show has even predicted developments in theoretical physics. In a 1998 episode called The Wizard of Evergreen Terrace, Homer Simpson becomes obsessed with the legacy of Thomas Edison and attempts to become an inventor himself. One scene shows Homer standing in front of a chalkboard covered with mathematical equations and scientific notations. In the corner of the board is an equation that appears unremarkable at first glance. However, Dr. Simon Singh, a physicist and author, noticed something extraordinary about Homer's scribbling. Writing in The Independent, Singh explained that the equation on the chalkboard actually predicts the mass of the Higgs boson particle, also known as the God particle. This fundamental particle, first theorized in 1964, was not actually discovered until 2012, when scientists at CERN's Large Hadron Collider finally confirmed its existence. Singh described the prediction as kind of amazing, noting that Homer had made this calculation 14 years before the particle was discovered. The mass value in the equation corresponds closely to what scientists eventually measured. While the show's writers cannot claim to have solved one of physics's greatest mysteries through an animated beer enthusiast, the coincidence added another entry to the growing list of Simpsons predictions. The show has also made forays into architectural prediction. The same 1995 episode that depicted smartwatches and video calling Lisa's wedding included an establishing shot of the London skyline set in the year 2010. Among the familiar landmarks, viewers can spot a pointed spire that doesn't match any building that existed in London at the time of the episode's production. This mysterious structure bears a striking resemblance to the Shard, the 95-story skyscraper that would become Western Europe's tallest building upon its completion in 2012. Construction on the Shard did not begin until 2009, and the building was not even in the planning stages when Lisa's wedding aired in 1995. Yet there it sits in the animated London skyline, occupying roughly the same position relative to Big Ben that the real Shard occupies today. Architecture critics and Simpsons fans have debated whether this truly counts as a prediction or whether the resemblance is coincidental. London has always been a city of spires and towers, and a generic pointed building in an imagined future skyline might naturally resemble any number of actual structures. Nevertheless, the visual similarity is difficult to dismiss, and it adds another layer to the show's reputation for seeing into the future. The question of how The Simpsons manages these predictions has spawned countless theories, from the mundane to the conspiratorial. The writers themselves have consistently offered the most boring explanation: probability and satire. Al Jean has stated that the predictions are really just educated guesses, based on observing trends and extrapolating them to logical conclusions. Bill Oakley has emphasized that with hundreds of episodes covering every aspect of American life, some plot lines are statistically bound to intersect with future events. William Irwin, a philosophy professor at King's College in Pennsylvania, whose book The Simpsons and Philosophy has been taught at the University of California, Berkeley, and other institutions, offers a more nuanced perspective. He points out that the show is the product of brilliant minds, many of them Harvard-educated, and that the writers rule on The Simpsons, not the actors. The result is a show packed with references to art, literature, pop culture, politics, and science. According to Irwin, when that many smart people produce a television show, it's bound to make some startling predictions. The mathematical concept known as the law of truly large numbers, presented by Harvard mathematicians Frederick Mustella and Percy Diaconis in a 1980-10 paper, provides a statistical framework for understanding the phenomenon. The law suggests that with a large enough sample size, even extremely improbable events become likely to occur. With over 790 episodes spanning more than 3 decades, The Simpsons has generated tens of thousands of jokes, gags, plot lines, and visual references. Given this volume of content, the emergence of some genuine predictions is not just possible but virtually inevitable. Psychologists point to confirmation bias as another factor in The Simpsons prediction phenomenon. Human beings are naturally inclined to remember instances that confirm their existing beliefs, while forgetting those that contradict them. When The Simpsons makes a joke that later seems prescient, it gets shared millions of times on social media and becomes embedded in popular culture. The thousands of jokes that never came true are simply forgotten. Yet, even accounting for these explanations, certain predictions remain difficult to dismiss. The specificity of the Trump presidency joke, the exact opponent in the curling gold medal match, the visual similarity to Lady Gaga's Super Bowl performance, these coincidences extend beyond what pure chance would seem to allow. The writers may not be time travelers or prophets, but they clearly possess an extraordinary ability to identify cultural trends and extrapolate them to their logical endpoints. One Simpsons writer, Stephanie Gillis, has offered perhaps the most honest assessment of the phenomenon. She has noted that there are so many things happening in the world and that she spends a lot of time discussing the show outside of work. This constant engagement with current events, combined with the satirical imperative to push every trend to its absurd conclusion, creates fertile ground for apparent predictions. the show's longevity plays a crucial role as well. Many of the most celebrated predictions, from smartwatches to the Disney-Fox merger, were simply ideas that were floating in the cultural atmosphere at the time the episodes were made. Disney had already acquired ABC when the 1998 episode joked about them buying Fox. Trump had already explored a presidential run when the 2000 episode depicted him leaving office. The writers were not predicting the future so much as recognizing the present and following its trajectory forward. But this explanation, while satisfying on a rational level, cannot fully account for the emotional impact these predictions have on viewers. When we watch an animated Homer Simpson scribbling equations that predict the mass of the Higgs boson, or see Marge and Homer defeat Sweden in Olympic curling 8 years before it actually happens, we experience something that feels like magic. The boundary between fiction and reality blurs, and for a moment we wonder if perhaps the writers of a yellow-skinned cartoon family really do have access to some cosmic knowledge denied to the rest of us. The Simpsons continues to produce new episodes, and fans continue to mine its vast archive for potential predictions. Every week brings new claims of prophecy, some more credible than others. Fact-checking websites like Snopes dedicate significant resources to evaluating these claims, debunking false ones while acknowledging the genuine coincidences. What remains indisputable is the cultural power of these predictions. They have transformed The Simpsons from mere entertainment into a touchstone for understanding our strange and unpredictable world. When major events occur, from political upheavals to technological breakthroughs, one of the first questions people ask is whether The Simpsons predicted it. The show has become a lens through which we process reality, a reference point that makes the chaos of modern life feel somehow more comprehensible. The writers of The Simpsons never set out to become prophets. They simply wanted to make people laugh while offering pointed commentary on American society. That their jokes keep coming true speaks less to any supernatural ability than to the fundamental absurdity of the world we live in. Reality, it turns out, is stranger than even the most outlandish animated satire could imagine. As Al Jean has observed, if you throw enough darts, you're going to get some bullseyes. The Simpsons has been throwing darts for over 36 years, and its aim has proven remarkably accurate. Whether through intelligence, probability, or some combination of both, America's favorite animated family has earned its reputation as the accidental oracle of our time. The story of The Simpsons' predictions is ultimately a story about the relationship between art and life, between satire and reality. It reminds us that the line between comedy and prophecy is thinner than we might think, and that sometimes the most outlandish jokes contain more truth than we're prepared to accept. As long as The Simpsons continues to air, and as long as the world continues to unfold in unexpected ways, this strange phenomenon will persist, a testament to the power of imagination and the infinite weirdness of the universe we inhabit.